Gasperson. I'm the one that continually puts my job at risk by bringing you some bad advice each week. That's our series, Bad Advice. And each week I'm bringing you bad advice about how to systematically ruin your life. Now, what we're really after is learning how to identify bad advice and replacing it with good, godly advice. We started out by talking about how to be dissatisfied in your life from day to day. And then last week, I gave you some advice about how to become an addict. This morning, I want us to turn our attention to a topic that I believe needs to be addressed in our churches and in our land and in the world today. This morning, I'm going to give you some terrible advice that if you follow it, you will have an affair and ruin your marriage. Aren't you glad you came to church today? Now, before I get going, let me just say a word to parents with younger children. I'm not going to say anything that I would be ashamed of saying in church, but I don't want to raise a question that you might not be ready to answer. And I certainly don't want to start my day tomorrow with an email of appreciation from you for opening up a whole new frontier of living for your children. And so I'll just leave all of that up to you. So let's start with a quick survey. How many people here are married or want to be married one day? Keep them up. How many of you with your hands up have planned on having an affair as something on your bucket list before you die? Only 3 of us. That's good. Now, this should be a red flag. Nobody intends to have an affair, but marital fidelity is probably the major reason for divorce today. How prevalent are marital affairs? Well, it's hard to put your hands on some real good statistics, but I found an organization called Trustify. They seem to be a faith-based private investigation company who did an informal survey of over 200 of their clients, and here's what they found. When asked, did you ever commit infidelity while you were married? 36% of males, 21% of females answered yes. When asked, did your spouse ever commit infidelity? 58% of men, 65% of women answered yes. The top reasons men gave for infidelity was lack of sexual satisfaction in their marriages, a desire for more attention, and a desire for a new experience. Most women said the reason they were unfaithful was a desire to seek revenge. Surprisingly, of those who answered, no one said that they committed infidelity because they were no longer romantically interested in my spouse, or they were romantically interested in someone else. Now, the message this morning is going to be based on the biblical definition of acceptable sexual activity. And I mention this because our culture has adopted an alternative description or definition of acceptable behavior that stands in sharp contrast to God's view. So just so we're clear, here is God's established boundary for intimacy in a marriage. It comes from Exodus 20:14. It happens to be one of the 10 commandments. Simply says this: you shall not commit adultery. Adultery is having an intimate experience with someone who is not your spouse. And here, God clearly defines the boundaries for sexual expression. And then along came Jesus, who raised the bar and suggested that adultery doesn't necessarily have to be confined to a physical act. In Matthew 5, Jesus said this. He said, "You have heard what is said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you," Jesus said, "that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And my friends, this is God's standard. Intimacy is only to be experienced within the boundaries of marriage and only with your spouse. And in spite of the clarity of these standards, extramarital affairs continue to happen both inside and outside the church. Now, before I share my bad advice with you, I must identify a sinister presence within our culture that creates the perfect conditions for an affair to happen. This presence is the elephant in the room for churches and in Christian homes. And it's time we name it and condemn it. This presence has a name, and its name is pornography. Porn is a deadly poison to a marriage relationship. Porn is dangerous because it's free, because it's easily accessible, and maybe most importantly, because it adversely changes the way women are viewed and treated. See, porn portrays women as sexual objects instead of real people. The only value women have in the realm of porn is to gratify someone else's sexual desires. Women aren't people to be loved or appreciated or listened to. They're objects. They're things to be used for the viewer's pleasure and nothing more. But that's not all. Porn also depicts women as constantly thinking about sex and always ready for a sexual encounter at any moment. And it's no wonder why we seem to be seeing an increase in the sexual-related violence that's going on in our world. See, in the world of porn, the word no doesn't exist. Yes means yes, and no means yes. And so imagine what happens when a pornographic mindset or pornographic expectations are brought into a marriage relationship. Lust and gratification, self-gratification, replaces deep bonding. Getting replaces giving. So is it any wonder that expectations begin to be unmet, which leads people to look elsewhere for their needs to be met? Pornography is a scourge. It creates a false reality of what's normal between men and women. And it smashes the dignity and the value of others. If you're having an issue in this area of your life, please seek help for the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your faith. And so now let's be honest. Who hasn't become frustrated or disillusioned with your marriage at one time or another? Who hasn't heard that voice at one time or another say, you know, I could be a little bit more happy if I was just with someone else? Or who hasn't had that personal conversation with a coworker where they seem to understand you even better than your spouse does. See, circumstances like this are fertile ground for an extramarital affair. And so I've come with some really bad advice to just push you right along so that you can get exactly where you want to go. So here are some choices that if you make them, I guarantee you, you will be well on the way to an extramarital affair. First choice is this: neglect your own marriage. Whose life isn't crammed full of activities already? There's work, which wears us out, and then we come home, and then there's the kids. And then there's everything that happens at church. And then there's chores to do around the house because everything's got to stay clean and fixed up. And then there's hobbies. We got to have hobbies because we got to be well-rounded people, right? And then there's the stuff that happens on our phone. And then there's binging Netflix. And before you know it, you're on the path to an affair because everything and everybody is getting your attention instead of your marriage. You want some advice from me? Devote your time and energy to everything else except your marriage. Don't spend your discretionary time and energy on your marriage relationship. Throw all your time and energy elsewhere. I mean, you're married, right? They're not going anywhere. They're locked in, right? Avoid making your marriage relationship, your top priority. Let yourself go physically. And when intimate opportunities present themselves, make excuses. Keep things boring. Keep things predictable. This will get you started in the right direction toward an affair. Here's your second choice you can make. Form an emotional bond with someone else. Hey, you want to know a great place to find somebody you can bond with? Work. Man, when you get to work, have you noticed everybody's dressed up kind of nice every day? Everybody's kind of on their nice behavior. You spend a lot of time with your coworkers, so after a while you get to know them really well. And when you're misunderstood or unappreciated at home, those coworkers are going to be sympathetic. You'll feel safe and listened to and appreciated. You'll start anticipating your little talks with them. And you won't have to inform your spouse of your new friend. Here are some quotes from real life people who have chosen to bond with someone else at work. They said this: "He was so spiritually minded, I'd been looking for someone to share my spiritual struggles with." Or this from a husband: "My wife was busy with the kids and not at all involved with my work. This girl admired me and treated me like I was really somebody. It felt so good." And then this: "I used to dread going to work, but after we started our friendship, I would wake up thinking of how I would love to see him later that day." Form an emotional bond with somebody else and you're on the way. Here's another choice you can make. Flirt and tease. See, once you develop that special bond with that person at work or your friend, the next step to keep things going is to flirt and tease with each other. This starts a little spark down inside. And you'll begin to look for private meanings to things or little inside jokes that only the two of you will understand. Here's some more quotes from people who have made the choice to flirt and tease. One said, "Then we started teasing each other, often with double meaning kind of things. Sometimes we'd tease even each other when we were together as two couples. It seemed innocent at first, but more and more we knew it really did mean something to us." Or this: "We would laugh and talk about how it seemed like we were made for each other. And then we'd tease each other about what kind of husband or wife we would be if we happened to be married to each other." The next choice is innocently touch or squeeze or hug. Hey, now you need to be careful when you get to this point, because you're really getting to the place where you're almost too far to turn back. Listen to how a minor touch turned out to be anything but minor. She said this, "He never touched me for months. Then one night, after working late, we were walking toward the door when he said, 'You're so special. Thanks for everything you do.' And then he turned and he hugged me tenderly, just for a second. I loved how I felt for that moment so much that I began to replay it over and over in my mind like a videotape. Now I know that I should have stopped it all right then. I never intended to ruin my family like this." And then he said this, "The first time she touched me was when we were doing registration together. We were sitting beside each other. I'd say something cute or funny, and she would giggle, and then under the table, she'd squeeze the top of my leg with her hand. That was really exciting to me." I'll bet it was, don't you? We're almost there. Another couple of choices, and you're right where you want to be. The next choice you can make, invent excuses to call or to meet. See, now you're in over your head. And since there's already sparks between the two of you, you might as well just go ahead and fan them into flames. And so make up excuses to talk to each other on the phone or to meet or to see each other. A man said this, she started arranging her schedule so that her husband dropped her off at committee meetings. I would hang around and offer to take her home, acting with as much nonchalance as I could muster up. And then this, pretty soon, my whole life was full of lies. I'd lie about where I was going, where I'd been, who I'd been with. The more suspicious my husband got, the better liar I became. But he knew something was going on, because it's hard to lie without people suspecting it. And then finally, the last choice you can make is to kiss and embrace, and you know the rest of the story. There's a country song whose lyrics fit good right now. Turn out the lights, the party's over. You know that song from Willie Nelson? Listen to him sing it instead of me. See, when you get to the place where there's physical encounters going on, the finish line is just ahead. About this time, a real person said, I began fooling myself into thinking that I was heroic for not going all the way. That's what I wanted to do, but by doing everything but, I fooled myself into thinking that I was successfully resisting temptation. What I didn't realize, was that not only what I was doing was wrong, but eventually I would take the next step. See, it's just not possible to freeze a relationship. You have to go ahead with it, or you have to break it off. There is no in between. All right, that's it. I can't stand it anymore. The bad advice is over. Let's do some real work. Let's lay down some suggestions, some principles about how to avoid getting into these kind of circumstance. Here's some suggestions about how to keep from having an affair ruin your marriage relationship. First, and this makes sense, reduce your risks. Proverbs 5:8 says this, keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. Here's the context of that verse. A father is talking to his son, and the father is talking to his son about an adulterous woman. And look at the advice he has for his son. Do not go near the door of her house. In other words, run away. And that's good advice for you and me too. See, we all have our own particular area of weakness. Maybe you have that one person in your life. They don't know it, but they are your weakness. We must learn to stay away from the places or the people that tempt us to want to fall. Keep your relationship with Christ alive and strong. Never be alone with the wrong people. Avoid all inappropriate places or situations. Don't dine alone with someone who isn't your spouse. You need to know that there are some instituted rules in our own church within our pastoral staff. We do not go to lunch with each other alone. And we don't ride in the car with each other alone. That's so if you see us at Olive Garden or Chick-fil-A, you won't wonder about what's going on with us. Install an internet filter on your computer if you need to. See, these are just a few ways to reduce the risks in your relationship. A second suggestion is this. Invest passionately in your own marriage. This again from Proverbs 5. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth, a loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? You're going to want to remember what I'm about to say. If the grass looks greener somewhere else, you need to water your own lawn. So many people get dissatisfied with the dynamics of their marriage that they start to believe a lie. And here's the lie. Nothing can ever get better. This is as good as it's going to get, and I don't have any reason to hope for anything better. That is a lie from Satan, because it is possible to improve the quality of your marriage. Can I say that again? It is possible, with God's help, to improve the quality of your marriage. Here's 3 suggestions that you can use to invest in your own marriage. First, you got to spend time with each other alone. I know this is hard, but this is critical. There's kids, there's job, there's work, there's a million things that will try to pull you away. But carve out time alone where you can talk to each other on a deep level, date each other, get somewhere by yourself. Second, spend time with each other in prayer. Now, women, tune out just a minute because I got to talk to the guys. Guys, can I tell you a secret? It's as hard for me as it is for you. Most guys just aren't made up in this particular way, and we want to be spiritual leaders in our homes, but somehow we've got this idea that being a spiritual leader means that we have to read 6 chapters to our wives each morning and then present this Bible study and all that. I know my wife would beat me in the head if I subjected her to that. Here's an idea. Before you go to work, just grab your wife's hand and say, before I leave, what would you like for us to pray for together this morning? You pick the topic, and we'll spend just a moment in prayer together. Guys, when you do that, your soul and your wife's soul lock together. You know how we feel, guys, about an intimate moment locking us? That's the way our wives feel when we take time and we pray together. Wives, take a minute to look at your husbands and tell him that I'm telling the truth. We don't know. And third is this. Spend time with each other in intimacy. It's a critical mistake to withhold intimacy from your spouse for revenge or as a means of getting something that you want. Ladies, intimacy bonds your husband to you in a way nothing else will. So spice things up, avoid routines, and you'll be investing in your marriage. So here's your homework assignment. One day this week, sit down with your spouse, where it's just the two of you, and ask them this question and listen very carefully. The question is this: what is one thing we can change in our marriage that would make our marriage better for you? And then just listen to what they have to say. What is something we could change or I could change so that our marriage is better for you? That's investing in our marriage. And then my third suggestion: realize the destruction that affairs cause. Again from Proverbs 5, for the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech, it's as smooth as oil, but in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. All that's happening when we choose to have an affair is that we're sacrificing what we want most for what looks best at that particular moment. And in case you haven't thought this all the way through, here are just a few consequences that an affair will bring to you. Have an affair and you'll have to sit down with your kids and explain to them why you and your mate can't live together anymore. Have an affair and you'll be breaking the heart of God. You'll be ruining another family besides your own. You'll be humiliating your spouse. You'll lose your reputation. You'll destroy people's trust in you. And like the Ginsu knife commercial says, but wait, there's even more. Because the consequences of an affair just keep coming and coming and coming. Here are some alarming statistics. After an affair, guess what percentage of people actually marry that other person? What would you say? The answer is 3%. So of those 3% of marriages, what percentage of them end up in divorce? 75%. Get out your calculator, do the math, and the odds of a lasting marriage after an affair is 0.075%, less than 1%. So let me wrap this up. With all the love that I have for you, I must tell you that I think it's time for us to wake up to where our marriages and our lives are going. See, nobody wakes up one day and says, I think I'll have an affair. An affair is simply the last small step on a journey that began way back whenever someone tolerated something wrong in a dynamic and didn't kick it out of their life. They let it stay. And then that turned into something a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And a month or 6 months or a year down the road, what started as something innocent enough ended up with that last step in an affair. We must stop tolerating those little secret things that will put us on the path to an affair. That person that just kind of causes an electricity, that has got to go. That occasional indulgence in porn has got to go. This belief that nothing can get any better and nothing is going to change, that lie has got to go. Because, my friends, if you just supply the person, Christ supplies the power to break any chain, to break any addiction, to change any marriage. I don't care what the conditions. I am a living, breathing example of a recreated marriage. And if God can do that for me, He can do it for you too. But it takes honesty, and it takes a willingness to say enough is enough. I will no longer allow these small secret things to dwell in my heart, in my life, in my marriage anymore. We can't help what happened yesterday, but we certainly can decide what happens today and the rest of our tomorrows. And if you're willing, Christ stands willing to change your marriage. I've been praying so hard for you and for your relationships. You know, when we're all at different places, we've been married different years, and we've come from all kinds of different circumstances. But I'm telling you, don't settle for a vanilla marriage. Don't settle. Allow God to do whatever He needs to do in you to purify you, to sanctify you, to make you clean. And then bring that into your marriage, and I'm telling you, you will have the kind of marriage that you've always hoped you can be. You need to know that I and the rest of our pastoral staff stand ready to help you in any way we can. We're not experts and we don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll keep searching until we find them right beside you. And we're committed to you, and we want to help you in any way that you allow us to. And so is God. That's the first step. Would you pray with me quickly, please? My Father, I thank you that you are the author of marriages. You invented a relationship between a man and a woman. And right now, this morning, I pray for every single marriage relationship here. I place them in your hands. For the marriages that are struggling, and there's hurt and there's disappointment. My Father, I ask you for healing. I ask that you recreate and soothe and turn hearts toward one another again. For those that are harboring tidbits of secret things that lead us away from a wholesome, purified, sanctified marriage, I pray that you would help us to name sin as sin and renounce it and kill it and kick it out and put it under your blood and find forgiveness so tomorrow can be a new day. God, I pray you would make our marriages stronger than they have ever been before. In your name, amen.
It's not working. There it is. Yeah. I hope the message was a blessing to you and to your marriage. And if you've been in a dark place, I pray that this brings some light to you and your relationship. Just a couple of announcements. If you are new with us, we want to be able to shake your hand and say hi to you and give you a gift over at the New Here area, right on this side of the mall area. Pastor George will be there to shake your hand, as well as some volunteers. And we just hope that you find a church family and a place where you can belong. Now, I just have a couple of announcements before we get you out of here. In just a few weeks, the first Saturday of March, we have FX. Decent, okay? Decent. That's okay. You're going to have to save your woo for the next announcement. We'll get there in a second. FX is a experience for the entire family, parents, grandparents, kids, grandkids, aunts, uncles. It is a great time where you learn about Jesus, you learn how to follow him well, and you have a good time together. So make sure you mark your calendar, plan on coming. It's right in the student chapel on Saturday, March 2nd. Plan on being there. Now, get your woos ready, okay? You got your woos ready. You just feel it building up. Good. Next Sunday is barbecue. Whoa. Well done. Yeah, I got to praise Jesus on this side. Yeah, it's well done. This is our youth barbecue fundraiser to help raise money to support our students going to summer camp and mission trip this upcoming summer. The tickets are $10 each. But in the words of George, quoting a commercial, but wait, there's more. If you buy 3, you get the 4th free.